I don't know if you've seen this too, but I have noticed a kind of renaissance of the murder mystery genre of fiction recently. There is a focus being given to the mystery genre. And I'm not talking about gritty police crime dramas, I'm talking about Agatha Christie style stories, your cozy winter reads. Murder mysteries in the old school sense, they're back. And so I want to talk today about some of my favourite, most impactful modern murder mystery stories that were not written by Agatha Christie. There are a lot of big name authors that I'm leaving off this list because I haven't gotten to them yet, but I've got 10 here for you. And this does include 2 books of the Honkaku genre of Japanese murder mystery fiction, which I've done articles and videos on in the past as well that you can go and check out. So here are 10 modern murder mysteries. Let's go. The first is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. Stuart Turton, as far as I can tell, is a really, really lovely guy, and he has a lot of courage to create a debut novel as ambitious and puzzling as this one. The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle begins with one of the biggest hooks I've ever seen in a novel. Our protagonist, our point of view character, is a nameless man with amnesia. And the very first thing that happens, the first line of this novel, is him finishing shouting out the name of a woman. It's as if he wakes up halfway through shouting out the name Anna, and goes, why is this name on my lips? Who is Anna? Where am I? And who am I? He's in a forest, and there's no one else around. Why was he screaming Anna? And so, he walks, and he arrives at a manor house. When he gets to the manor house, there's a party going on, or being prepared. And our man is told that he's a doctor, and he's a guest at this party, and everyone sort of helps him with his amnesia. And when he wakes up, he's in a different body. And it's here that we find out that what's actually happening is our protagonist is someone else who is going to move from body to body, possessing the people at this party over the course of the next few days, about a week. And his sole purpose is to understand and prevent the death of the titular Evelyn Hardcastle, who is a member of the family hosting this event. It's very video game-esque, the idea of controlling multiple people, a Groundhog Day narrative, a puzzle being solved, mysteries to unpack. The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle is incredible. It is a puzzle box. It is layers upon layers upon layers of mystery and puzzles. And, without spoiling anything, it really, really sticks the landing. This was probably the novel that got me back into the mystery genre, and I am very, very grateful. Next is a book that recently became a new favourite of mine. This book now stands shoulder to shoulder alongside Mary Shelley's Frankenstein as my favourite book ever, and this is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is a murder mystery, it is a dedication to theatre and Shakespeare specifically, and it's also a piece of dark academia. I love everything about this novel. If We Were Villains begins with a framing device. A man called Oliver is coming out of prison. He's about 31 and he's been in there for 10 years for a murder he didn't commit. We find out that the victim was one of his, not colleagues, what do we call them? Fellow students. Classmates. Nailed it. Oliver went to this special academy. He was a university student at a place where you train to become an actor. And there were 7 people in his year group. These 7 students were all putting on Shakespeare plays semester after semester, and they're about to graduate. They live and breathe Shakespeare. Everything about their lives is Shakespeare. Shakespeare's words bleed into their ordinary, everyday conversations. They are the obsessives of Shakespeare. And we know that one of them is going to die. We also know that Oliver will go away for the murder, and we know that he didn't do it. When we flash back 10 years to this event, to this one fateful year in Oliver's life, we have these thoughts in our mind. Who will die? Who will kill them? Why did Oliver go down for this? But what's so interesting about this as a murder mystery is the mystery element is sort of forced back to the deeper caverns of your skull as you read it, because it's the character drama that's kind of at the forefront. You get to know these people, you get to know their personalities, their differences, their relationships, the fact that they're sleeping with each other and having fun parties. You get to enjoy the Shakespeare element, the plays that they put on, all of this, while wondering at the back of your mind who is going to die and who will kill them. And then when the murder eventually happens, the police investigation goes on in the background, even though we know that someone has been killed and someone did it. It's a murder mystery blended with dark academia and a character drama. And the way that the mystery is so stitched into it rather than being at the forefront makes it even more compelling, because the mystery feels like an itch that you really want to scratch. I could talk about this book forever. I've already done another video on it. If We Were Villains is now my joint favourite novel. I love it to death, appropriately. Next up is The Last House on Needless Street by Katrina Ward. This is a book that blends the mystery genre with gothic horror and thrillers. It does a lot of things. Every dark genre of fiction is combined here in some way or another. And at the time of recording, I'm actually currently reading her follow-up book, Sundial, which is also bleak and dark and a thrilling mystery. The Last House on Needless Street focuses on a man called Ted. He lives very reclusively. He lives very reclusively. He lives very a reclusive life. Wow. And 10 years ago-ish, he was the prime suspect for the disappearance/murder of a young girl who vanished at the lakeside not far from Ted's house. Nothing came of it, he was cleared of all charges, and he went on with his life. Now he lives in a more or less boarded up house with his cat and his daughter, a daughter who is not always there. So we assume that Ted is divorced and they share custody. That must be it. And we also get the perspective of the cat, Olivia. The cat is a point of view character in this, and we sort of see the house and the street outside and Ted and his daughter all from the cat's perspective. And you immediately have a lot of questions that are pretty obvious things. Did Ted do that initial kidnapping/murder? Is his daughter the person that he kidnapped, if he kidnapped anyone at all? Is the cat perhaps a person, because that would explain her perspective, but then no, that doesn't make sense. Where's the mother? Why isn't she there? If she isn't there at all, then there is no mother. You start to ask these questions. And most of the story takes place in this house, giving it a very gothic horror feel. This really is a gothic horror thriller mystery story. It wrong-foots you at every turn. You may guess a few of the twists, you might not. But if you like your mystery stories to be a little horror tinged, and for this to be a kind of Shirley Jackson-esque American Gothic, there's a lot going on here and it all works together so beautifully. The Last House on Needless Street is fantastic. I mentioned at the start that I wanted to talk about 2 Honkaku genre books. The Honkaku genre is a subgenre of murder mystery within the Japanese literary canon, and there are hundreds of these novels. Honkaku is a very big deal in Japan, and it has been for like a century. But I want to talk about 2 specific novels, my 2 favorite books within the Honkaku genre, and one of them I only read very recently, and that is The Tattoo Murder by Akimitsu Takagi, translated from Japanese by Deborah Boehm. This is an unusually thick novel for a Japanese murder mystery, or for any murder mystery. Murder mystery stories are often about 2, maybe 300 pages. This one's, I think, over 400 pages long. And that's because it is a murder mystery story first and foremost. It's in the title. But it's also a character drama. Takagi spends a long time really focusing on his characters and making sure that you care about them, even the one that you know is the murder victim, because the blurb gives it away. You spend a lot of time with her, about a quarter of the book, and you really get to like her and enjoy her as a character before she is very, very brutally killed. As for the tattoos in the title, Japanese tattoo culture is a very key aspect to this novel. It's set just after World War II, and it was written then as well, in 1948. The victim is a heavily tattooed young woman whose father was a legendary tattoo artist. He tattooed all 3 of his children. And she says to our protagonist, who is a young medical student, that she doesn't think she has long left. She's nervous about something. And then, yeah, she turns up dead and it's a locked room mystery. She was found in her locked bathroom in her own house with the water still running, and her torso is missing, presumably because someone wanted to steal the enormous tattoo down her back. And we've already met a character who once asked her if, after she died, he could slough the tattoo off her back and frame it, which he has already done in the past. But he's the one that discovered her alongside our protagonist, and he feels like a red herring, maybe. I won't tell you any more, but this is a fantastic locked room Honkaku Japanese murder mystery that I urge you to check out. The next Honkaku book that I want to mention is The Theagon House Murders by Yukito Ayatsuji. This was translated from the Japanese by Ho-Ling Wong, and it is a dedication specifically to Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. If you've never read it, And Then There Were None is considered her magnum opus, her masterpiece, her greatest novel. And I've read about 10-ish Agatha Christie novels. It was the first one I read, and while it's not my favourite, I do think it is her best. I really think it is perfect. In a lot of ways, it does so much more with the formulas that she established than anything else of hers. That said, my favourite is still Crooked House. But anyway, that book is still considered her magnum opus. And The Theagon House Murders is an homage to And Then There Were None. That book is referenced within this novel. Ayatsuji clearly has a huge amount of love and respect for Christie, and this novel in particular, and The Theagon House Murders actually follows a group of students, university students, who have this murder mystery club at their school. And they have decided to go to an island off the coast of Japan for a little vacation together for a week. But very, very recently, just a few months before they got there, this island, which was owned by a rich man, was the site of a brutal murder. And once they get there, something happens that makes them think that they are going to be killed off. They are frightened. And the links between this novel and Then There Were None are pretty obvious. They're on the nose, because this is kind of a dedication. But it is a fantastic, multi-layered murder mystery in its own right. And there are multiple perspectives and characters, because we also get the perspective of a few other characters that are currently still on land, somehow connected to these characters that are locked on this island together. Of all the great Japanese murder mysteries that I've ever read, this and The Tattoo Murder are the two that I recommend above all others. I love these two books so much. Next up is a book that is technically and often considered a horror novel, but I kind of disagree, and that is The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. Grady Hendrix is a horror author, and all of his books have really fantastic titles, and they all poke fun at the tropes and themes of the horror genre, especially within horror cinema. And The Final Girl Support Group is about final girls. If you don't know what a final girl is, she is traditionally the woman who is left at the end of a slasher film, the lone survivor of a massacre. She's always a girl, she's usually the one that ends up killing the killer, but not always, and that factors into this novel in particular. But as I said, this is much less horror and more a murder mystery. The titular support group has been set up and has been going for years and years for a group of women who are now all middle-aged, and they were all final girls in the 80s. They all survived massacres from masked men carrying machetes, etc. Lots and lots of references to the great slasher films of the 80s. But one day, one of them doesn't turn up, and she's found dead in her home. And so we know that someone is killing off final girls. And not only that, but a new final girl has emerged. A new massacre has just taken place, and there was one final girl. And our protagonist is a member of this final girl support group who, even within this group, is kind of an outsider for a few different reasons. One of those being that she is incredibly paranoid and reclusive. Oh, now I can say that word. Anyway. But she's a very interesting protagonist because she decides to kind of take this case upon herself and figure out who the hell is trying to kill them all. So this is about a killer of final girls who is trying for some reason to kill them all off. While it is a horror novel because our protagonist is terrified, she's scared, she's vulnerable, she's on the run, and it's a great homage to slasher fiction, even down to the fact that slasher films have recently seen a revival, and that's why there's a new massacre within the novel. All very clever stuff, so it's very, very dedicated to horror, and it loves horror. It's still a murder mystery. We still don't know who killed the initial final girl. We don't know why. We know that they're all in danger and they're going to get killed off one by one. And we follow the protagonist as she tries to figure out who is doing this and why, and ultimately try to stop it. It's a really, really fun book. If you love horror films, but you want to read something that is far more mysterious than it is scary, definitely check out the Final Girl support group. Next is a piece of historical fiction, The Key in the Lock by Beth Underdown. I read this book a little while ago and I didn't talk about it at all anywhere, and now I have my chance. This book is set in 2 different time periods, both following the same woman. Her name is Ivy, and her adult self that we follow has just lost her son in World War I. And then we flash back to her past as a child during the Victorian period, where she was the daughter of the local village doctor, and there was a fire in the village's big house, the big manor house, where the son of the master of the house died in this fire. And Ivy, as a child, is heavily traumatized by this fire. And as an adult, she's doubly traumatized by the fact that she just lost her son, and her husband is slowly fading away. And when we flip back to the past, we also see how she and her husband originally met, and how he also has a connection to the fire. It's a mystery in multiple ways, and the most prominent mystery is who started the fire and why. Why did they want to kill the child? Did they mean to kill the child? If they didn't, were they targeting someone else? Did they set the fire for a different reason? We know it wasn't an accident. It couldn't have been. So what's going on? And why are we spending so much time with Ivy as an adult? There's a lot of moving pieces here. It's quite a slow burn, it's a great piece of historical fiction, and a very unique mystery story. Another fantastic piece of mystery historical fiction that's also wonderfully camp, creepy, and gothic is The Leviathan by Rosie Andrews, one of my favourite books of 2022. I ate up this book for all of its camp and gothic delights. It's set during the English Civil War, and it follows a young man who comes home from the war to his homestead out in the English countryside, and he has a 16-year-old little sister who insists that their new maid or housekeeper is sleeping with their father and after something bad. And that's all we know at the beginning, but we also periodically flash forward in time to our protagonist as an old married man. And he seems pretty content, his life seems pretty chill, except for the fact that there is a monster in his attic that recently woke up, and he now needs to feed it and keep it safe and keep it locked and chained up. What do those 2 things have to do with each other? I won't tell you anymore. The Leviathan is a wonderful read. It is fantastically monstrous and campy and fun. It is a gothic historical novel with a lot of mystery, especially related to what the hell this monster in the attic is, where it came from, and why we're focused on it now when he's an old man. How will we get all the way there from when he was in his 20s during the war? There are incredible twists and turns in this novel, and I mean incredible ones. Both natural and supernatural. I cannot recommend The Leviathan highly enough. Yet another piece of historical fiction is The Confessions of Franny Langton by Sarah Collins, which is now a TV show as well. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm so happy for her that she got to have this turned into a full TV show. The Confessions of Franny Langton begins at the end, with the titular Franny Langton in the 1820s on trial for the murder of a woman that she both loved and worked for. Then we flash back to her childhood. She grew up on a plantation in Jamaica, and we know that she eventually makes it to London. This is a sapphic novel about lesbian love, forbidden lesbian love, between a rich white woman in London and a black former slave turned servant. And of course you've got the main murder mystery element, which is the death of the woman that she loved and worked for. Who killed her? Why did they kill her? Was it Franny? If it was, why in the world would she do this? If it wasn't, who did it? How did they frame her? Lots and lots of fun questions. But we also primarily follow the life story of Franny Langton and how she got here to this situation from the plantations in Jamaica. It's an incredible piece of black historical fiction and a wonderful murder mystery story. And finally we have Elena Knows by Argentinian author Claudia Pinheiro, and this was translated from Spanish by Francis Riddle. Elena Knows is a curious kind of mystery. The titular Elena is an old woman. Her daughter has recently died. She died in their local church, and the two of them had a very difficult and dysfunctional relationship, but Elena believes that the suicide everyone claims it to have been was not suicide at all. And the only real reason she has is that her daughter was scared of rain. She would never have gone to the local church during a rainstorm, and it was raining that night, because she was scared of the church being hit by lightning. And so there's no way she would have gone there of her own volition to kill herself. And so Elena is traveling across Buenos Aires to go meet with a person that she believes will believe her, to uncover the truth of what really happened to her daughter. It's a short, brilliant piece of literary mystery fiction, and I loved it to pieces. Very clever, brilliant twist on the formula of the murder mystery by an author who is primarily known for writing great crime fiction. Okay, there are your 10. Those were 10 modern-ish, or modern translated, murder mystery stories, one of which was heavily inspired by and dedicated to Agatha Christie. That's it. That's all I've got to say. Subscribe for books.